On this week's episode of Three Cups and a Dash of Spirituality, we have a guest, and his name is Samuel Bowling. We call him Sam, and Carissa and I met him on our recent trip to New Orleans. He's got a lot to say. He's a teacher, he's a student, and that's what we're about. So let's start the music. Hey everyone, it's Michelle. Welcome to this week's episode of Three Cups and a Dash of Spirituality. I am here today with the lovely Carissa.
Hello, hello.
And the beautiful Stacy.
Hello.
Hey ladies, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good. I'm a little bit nervous because we have a guest with us today, and I'm going to wait just a second to announce him because I'm going to give a little bit of background. As many of you know, Chris and I have been lucky enough recently to make some trips. And when we go on these trips, we really want to have an experience. We want to learn something new. And when we were in New Orleans and we've talked about him, we found this wonderful shop called the Hands of Fate. And serendipitously, I will say, we got to meet one of the owners or the owner, Sam Bowling, and he is here with us today. He has agreed to talk with us. So I'm just going to say, hey, Sam, how are you?
I'm good. How are you all doing today?
We're doing well.
I'm excited for this, actually. I love chatting about how I got into this and just the simplicity of, like, if you let go of all of those things the world tells you and kind of look through your own lens, you can find the world is way more magical if you let it be.
Absolutely.
And I think I think that was, you guys basically stumbled upon the shop. And I think that was a much wider and broader experience than any of us expected.
We had one of the paranormal stops was at your shop, and we got the most activity at his shop that night. And we got some on video that we shared, how things were moving and balls were lighting up. And then I liked his shop, and I was like, let's go shop in there and get some candles or something. And we walked in and we were able to get a session with him. He was like, oh, I actually have some space. We tried online and he was booked out for a month or two.
Yeah, it was so serendipitous the way it all worked out, because as Carissa said, we went there with the Paranormal Society. She loved the shop. And so we actually stopped by your shop like 3 times and it was closed. And we knew you'd be back at 2. So we planned our whole afternoon to go back by the shop at 2. And just so happens you were sitting in the entry area and you were so welcoming. You were so warm. I mean, again, serendipitous. I don't know how to say it. You made time for us. You brought us into the fold and it was just wonderful.
I mean, I think, though, I'm going to throw out there that speaks to the majority of the psychic, medium, or intuitive community, because the majority of the intuitives that you meet are typically very genuine. So I love that you were just that.
How can you not be after years of it being kind of like beating you over the head of what is real? I stumbled across this so many years ago. So I'm gonna give you a quick little background just for everyone to hear. Just, I grew up in a small town of about 600 in Iowa called Sebula, just back in a time when it was still before computers and all of that. So art was my thing. I was really into magic as a kid, like magic tricks and magicians and stuff. And so I would I wrote a whole book as a kid, and every magic trick I saw, I wrote how it was done and put it in a 3-ring binder. I still have it. It's kind of funny. And it's like, one time my mom walked in the room and I have this floating body over my bed that's made out of a wireframe and all this stuff. It scared the crap out of her and that. And then, but that was also the time that I was also reading stuff about astral travel and that. And I was a good Catholic boy, raised altar boy, went to church till I was 18, all that stuff. So I was able to get occult books on the down low at Christmas time. We would go to the mall and they would give us like a half hour in the bookstore to buy stuff for people, and they wouldn't check the bags. So I would buy these little astral travel books and these little witchcraft books and hide them, and no one would know that I had them. And so that kind of led this thing. My prayer to God was if there's real magic in the world, I want to know it. Well, grew up in Iowa, 18, moved to California. And I started having a lot of weird stuff that just didn't make sense happen in my life. And I found counselors that couldn't help me. And I met this little old lady and she just started laughing. And I'm like, Pat, this isn't funny. She goes, oh, it's really funny. You just got dead people talking to you. I'm like, I don't believe that. She's like, come to my class and we'll go from there. I ended up sitting 10 years with her every Saturday for 2 hours a Saturday in a spiritualism class in the Valley of Los Angeles. And there's about 4 to 6 of us that were regular through that time. And it really, what a development circle is it's as simple as we sit there, we talk about what's come up, meditation, little bit of healing work, little psychometry work maybe as well. It's a little bit of a psychic workout. And so that really developed so much for me, but I was so inquisitive. I got into meeting amazing mediums like James Van Praagh and John Edwards and all these different people over the time, and getting kind of taken under different wings of like, hey, come here to this workshop this weekend and do this because you need this direction. And then got involved into medicine circles and shamanic circles and ceremonies like ayahuasca and things of that nature. And so what started out as this trying to quiet what was going on around me turned into an awakening of a spiritual kind. And one of the biggest things in this whole thing that really made me have to embrace it in a way, I was halfway around the world in Munich, 2004, woke up to a dream of someone being bludgeoned and murdered over drugs. I know there's pistols involved, pistol whipped. And it was this weird thing because it just went to home, meaning Iowa, but I didn't understand that. And then over the next 6 months, in more meditations in detail, came up around it. And then I found out 6 months later, a kid I grew up with went missing the same day that I had that dream. So, and he was in Pennsylvania. And so literally at that point, I kind of had to embrace it in a way that like, this is very real. What I had was what the detectives had. The kid was like the younger brother to me in a way because he was best friend. It was my best friend's younger nephew that grew up with them. So I knew him from the time he was born. And that story got so twisted over the years because we could never get the guy to confess that he murdered my friend. It took 16 years for it to come to light before we got to recover my friend's body. But over those years, if I wouldn't call the detective a couple times a year and check in, my sisters would have Adam, the kid who went missing, would show up in their dreams or in their living room, literally when they turned around. I would get messages out of nowhere. Adam says you need to talk to the detective now. Weird. So that's just in a nutshell the past 30 years with, I can hit so many other highlights along the way. But it was at 46 when I'm coming through New Orleans. Someone goes, hey, do you want to read in New Orleans here as a reader? And I said, if we can find a room for X amount of dollars, I'll do it. He found a room for that price and didn't know that it was attached to this building and the history of this building, which was the first church of witchcraft in Louisiana and also the United States.
Oh,
So
wow.
let's go back to my prayer to God. I want to know real magic in the world inside and out. Okay. So that's the best way for me to describe condensed version Sam.
Yeah.
With so many other things as well too. But what else do you want to talk about?
Well, I do want to mention to all the listeners, because we did record an episode about our trip to New Orleans. And you're talking about your friend Adam. And I do want to say this was a very connective piece also. We met with you. You said, come back in an hour. I'll do a reading for you. So we went over to Muriel's and we had a cocktail. And I never, ever make a note of like asking the bartender their name. But I saw his name tag and I said, oh, is your name Adam? And I would never do that. And that was in that hour between when we met you, you said you'd read for us, and then we came back. And so I'm just like, it's all again connecting.
That story was, I tell you, I don't know if it was harder for me to come out as gay or as a medium, as a psychic in a weird way, because people didn't want to believe it. And the cops will not take the information, like where they can't take it legally to court. They can, but they hire people anyway. And the weird part is I'm contacting the detective in the case and telling him the list of things he's looking at and the suspects and all of it, and giving him detail as properties and things. And I think that's a bigger understanding in that story. And I think that's where I really had to go, are you going crazy or is this very real? And talk myself off that ledge.
It's interesting that you say that, because I think that comes up for a lot of people whenever they start to establish that they are intuitive or psychic or whatever, is that there is this period of time that is like, am I going crazy? Is this real? Is this a thing? So I appreciate hearing it, just, kind of a broad across the spectrum, because it is very challenging.
Well, I mean, so I grew up in a town of 600 people. If you don't leave that bubble, there's going to be a certain level of a misunderstanding or ignorance to the rest of the world. And I think a lot of people don't get a chance to leave their bubbles. And so when you start bringing in outside information they're not used to, it's just a hard no, or it's the devil. And I giggle about it now after years of studying and talking and being through different ceremonies and things, and realize that we're 8 billion people all learning to dance in the same room on this planet. And when will we all step back and learn some steps? But when will we also step up and teach some as well?
Yeah.
And, women, you're told about your bodies, you have to listen to them. Men, they think it's freaking gas. They don't understand intuition. And it's very real. And I'm fortunate. I had 3 sisters, a mom, and a grandma in the house. And my grandma, it's really interesting because we'd go shopping and when I was a kid, and my grandma had some stuff happen. So she lived with us because there were some mental things going on, but she'd look over her glasses and she'd go, that baby's got demons on it. And I kind of laugh about it now because I think she was seeing spirits around these people pushing the baby in the cart. And it wasn't demons, but because of her upbringing from these West Virginia mountains, that's what she knew. It was of the devil. Yeah. And so we start breaking out and we start realizing so many of these ghosts and demons and fear closet stuff are really never those things. They're masks for the people's psyche to heal in certain ways. It just over time you realize that a little bit more, hopefully.
And I love to point out how when you get intuitive psychic downloads, not psychic downloads.
Well, sometimes they're psycho, trust me.
Like it. I mean, that, like you back to your story, it may not unfold till 6 months or years till it makes sense. And a lot of times they're metaphors that are subjective, and
No, that's
Go
true.
ahead.
So one thing I learned, like so I had a premonition about the Japanese tsunami before it happened. What it was, I woke up in the middle of the night. It was December 16th. I don't remember what year it was. So it was a couple months before it actually happened. But in the dream, it was almost like a little kid took a Sharpie marker on a white piece of paper and drew 2 concave towers with cracks with a fire between them, and smoke like these little spirals up out of the stacks. Then there was one stick man, and then there was this big wave, and then up on the top of it there was a rectangle with a red dot. And so when I woke up, my brain said Japanese tsunami artwork / vision, because it was the Japanese flag and it was the man running from the wave, the tsunami. And I had no idea what the concave towers or any of that was about. Well, that was Fukushima a few months before it happened. Now, premonition is real. And no, I was not the only person in the world that got that premonition. I was one of many, because a lot of people were being told by the universe, hey, you're going to need to hold some space when we lose 250,000 people in 10 minutes coming up.
Right.
And I think that's kind of that universal connection. If we really start to let the consciousness web speak to us and give us the information and learn to listen to those channels and being true to ourselves, being centered in ourselves, I think so much more can happen and connect. And it's not about oh, I can do this, or oh, I'm that. It's like, oh no, the universe is stating, hey, pay attention. We're going to need some help here.
So you kind of just touched on something, and I want to ask you a question about your experiences, if that's okay.
Yeah.
You know, as a reader, with your experience and, you know, just being out in like the general public, do you have a way or a process that you go through to kind of protect yourself against other people's energies, or not seeing too much information and not receiving downloads everywhere you go? Because I know that protective piece can be a challenge for a lot of intuitives. I mean, I think everyone here kind of has their ways of not downloading, but what's your experience?
Shields up. Learning to come up with a way. So in spiritualist work, spirit is life, the mind builds it, and the physical is the result. So if you can build that castle in your mind's eye, if you can build the fortress, if you can build that bubble around you to see your auric field, you can then fill it up and let it become that mirrored armor for the day. So that way, when people look at you, they're getting a reflection of themselves. That's a big way that I do it. Okay. And it's funny because a lot of times when people start going, oh, you are this, 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 and this, it's because there's things that they are working on that they're seeing mirrored back to them in an interesting way. And so the brighter your light becomes, the brighter the shine on the shadows for those around as well, too. And so one of the things I do is I tell everybody, when you get up in the morning, talk to your body. Are you my anxiety? Are you my headache? Are you my stomach ache? Why do I feel off? Oh, you're not. And when you say those things, if it doesn't belong to you, it will slightly shift and move. And you're like, oh, okay, let's understand this anxiety later today, whatever it's about. Show me true then. Okay. I kind of talk to it. Okay. And then I get in the shower and I wash Dreamtime down the drain and I put that armor on for the day. And I think of like everywhere that the water touches, I'm covered. And just golden. Yeah.
I love that, because I think we've talked about it many times where, like, I know for me, if I'm about to do a reading and I start to feel something in my body at any point in time, and I start to notice it and question, is this me or is this someone else? I already know the answer. As soon as I start asking that question, I'm like, this isn't me. This isn't mine.
Well, so my biggest thing, I have all senses. So clairsentience, audience, clairvoyance, you name it. One of the biggest things, like 8 months ago, woke up in the middle of the night, ankle, calf, lower back, like something shot through it, screaming. My partner's like, oh, you're having another calf cramp. I'm like, this is no freaking calf cramp. This is not at all. I had to put an ankle brace on it, come down to the store. No one's booked for the day. A lady walks in. I start feeling all those things again. So as I sit her down, I start talking about it. She starts crying. 10 days prior, her business partner was shot in the ankle, calf, and lower back and bled out. That was his spirit using that energetic moment before he has to go into his life review saying, hey, let her know that I'm dead and I want to thank her, but let her know that I know what's up. Yeah. And it's bizarre and weird, but after I told her that, those pains went away. Mm-hmm. You know, I get it kind of more regularly than not. Is people sit down, I go to do a little prayer of intention, I'll get the flip of the heart attack or the stroke. One of my stories, when I put my book out, I wrote it because I think so many times we do things and we think it's for something we want to do. But like, I was going to Greece for a trip to kind of unwind from a really hellish time in my life. It was my gift to myself, to go on the spiritual pilgrimage. I get 32,000 feet in the air. It's like I'm having a heart attack and a stroke, and I have to talk myself down from it. And I should have probably, to some degree, now that I look back, most people would have put themselves in the hospital, but I was able to go, no, this is something else. A couple days later, I'm sitting at a meal, the whole menu flips on me, and it's the tour guide that's next to me. And I walk out, go smoke a cigarette, and the voice says, tell her we can talk now. Tell her we're okay. I have no idea what it's about. The next day over coffee, she goes, what was going on in the restaurant yesterday? And I said, well, I don't get it. Someone with a heart attack, someone with a stroke, talking about how they can communicate now. Her dad and uncle, the last 2 years of them being alive together, could not communicate because the uncle had a stroke. And so the dad had the heart attack. And a month prior to me coming to Greece, the uncle died on April 26th, which is my birthday.
Oh. There's those connections.
Yeah.
And this is that silliness of like, oh my God, here we are. And it was her needing to know that, yes, we can talk now. We can communicate. The family needs to know this. And the family hadn't even shared about the uncles dying much to the community because they were still in their Grecian grief process.
Mm-hmm.
And so, my good Lord, why does that have to happen that way?
Right. Well, I know one of the reasons I was super drawn to you is because I'm going through a couple things that mirror what you've gone through with Adam. And you have given me a lot of great advice. And listening to you talk today, and earlier you were talking about all the people you worked with and how that moved into shamanic ceremonies. Was that an easy transition?
Literally. So, quick little rendition. So, moved, lived in LA, did a bunch of that, got into ayahuasca ceremonies on a fluke. Actually, one of my friends that I was talking about that lost his house, I was working with him on a film and he got me involved in it. And that transformed my world. I ended up moving up to Portland and getting involved with a bunch of different teachers and then working out of metaphysical shops. And so I taught a class for a number of years called Psychic Workout. And it was literally just teaching people. It was the same time every week and we'd get together. We had about 16 people. It was up in Portland area. And so I did that for about 3 years up there, then moved back to LA and went through some major life crazy that happens, how it all kicks you in the butt when it does. And so I literally just had to find everything possible to help me through what I was going through because it was shy of a nervous breakdown, but it was a nervous breakthrough. And so I went to polarity therapist. I went to semantic therapists. I had body work done. I was dealing with a repressed abuse from when I was a kid. And so I hired tantric and healing workers in that type of a way as well, too, because I needed to touch and feel again. And in that process, I was introduced to cranial sacral work. And one of my counselors said, hey, there's an intensive happening in Hawaii. I think you should go do this. And so I took my sister as a thank you to her for helping me through a bunch of stuff. One of my older sisters, I took her to Hawaii to learn it. She's a massage therapist. And it revolutionized my world in that 1 week. Just what I learned in that 12 days of being there and all of the sessions. And it was a group of 12 of us. Most of them were from Japan. I had one other person plus my sister and me from the US that were there. And so it was this beautiful 12 days of intense clearing and healing and connection work. And I literally, at that moment, brought it back home with me and went, I am going to bring this into my practice. And when I put people on a table, it will be done in a cranial sacral way, although it is shamanic, although I will use drumming and all this stuff as well. And that's just kind of where I've evolved to when I do shamanic sessions now. You get about an hour of where it's mostly an entire cranial sacral session where I'll use all the different tools or crystals or things as well, too. And so really, you have to remember spirituality is a toolbox. You're picking up things and learning it along the way, and you're going to need them for different reasons. So like I'm a certified hypnotherapist, but I don't tell everyone because I don't want everybody coming in to make them stop smoking.
Yeah.
I want to be able to regress people and help them find the trauma or the trigger, the root, pull that root, and let's heal that, seal it up, and move into where we're now.
Yeah.
I like one thing that you just said a minute ago, and I just kind of wanted to bring attention to it if you guys don't mind. But I love how you said, like, you were talking about this breakdown and instead turned it into a breakthrough.
I love that.
Yes, because I know Michelle, Carissa, and we just were talking about, 2024 in review and stepping into the new year. And I think all three of us in the past year have gone through hell and come back, and then life has changed so much and everything is different. And I know I can only speak for myself, but there were periods of 2024 that I honestly was not sure I was going to survive it. But I love the idea of focusing on the breakthrough, because you have to go through that insanity to get to, that other end, to continue to develop, to find those new tools to really process that.
Well, the thing that's interesting, what people don't get is I talk about spiritual hygiene a lot. So Snoopy, Charlie Brown, right? You've watched Charlie Brown before? So there's a character called Pigpen. And so Pigpen has that dust ball around him all the time. To me, we humans can be like, it's almost like a bunch of old space debris that doesn't really do anything anymore. It just kind of is junk that floats in our atmosphere. And those are old stories. Those are old situations and things. And I think we have to shamanically clear that out. I think we're supposed to do our releasing, our screw you letters and burning them off, our thank you letters, our gratitude to the universe, all that together is what clears that energy field. And we're so used to holding these things and running at the capacity that we can. We need someone to be the jumper cables for the universe to tap into our energy bubble and say, hey, what do you need to push this through? I don't think none of the work is me. It's all me being a conduit for spirit. It's jumper cables for the universe. And that's kind of, I just listen. I might do something, use a feather fan at a moment, do a press or an extraction at a point on the body to release whatever's stuck. But none of it is me.
Yeah.
I guess that's the best way to put it, really,
Yeah. So that's why you can't go around saying me, 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 me. I saw, I know this, I know that. It's like, thank you, Spirit, for giving me those messages.
The second I hear people start to do that in spiritual work, I freak out because I see the manipulation that's going on. And this has never been about me. This is about a larger tribe. This is about a connection in a whole other way,
Yep.
One of my big things about spiritual work is I think of it a little differently of traveling through time on a spiral. Okay. So people will think traveling this way, like linear through time. I think of it more as like up and down spiral, winter, spring, summer, fall, winter, spring, summer, fall. And everybody gets the backdrop of life. But as you travel that spiral, you go through different evolutions and where you get another level of like Photoshop, you get another layer of information. Okay. A lot of people will touch the first or second layer of that spiritual information, but a lot of them go, oh, wait, I've arrived. No, you haven't. It's an eternal quest of traveling that spiral. And so many people shoots and ladders and just come right back down and work their way up and do that over and over again. Don't even realize that there's levels above where they're at. And then you have the people that spend a lifetime and it's not that they're higher than, it's just they're given the perspective to see through those layers from the learning. I think as we learn, we're pulling back information from other lifetimes into the now as well. I think so much of the magic I do, I've read a lot, but so much of it comes back innately once I start reading, once I start doing.
Yep.
And I think so many of us, we start to realize it. We can be really textbook in the beginning and be real clinical about it. And then as we start to do it, we're like, oh, wait a second. This is the dance of alchemy.
Yep.
This is taking the tools that work, bringing in new ones, seeing what does. When you get stuck, hey, help. What am I not seeing? I can't read well for myself. We all can read to a certain degree for ourselves, but I think we need outside perspective and perceptions that can see the fractures and the things that we're not looking at, because it's really easy to turn the other way and not look in that direction.
I'm just biased to read for myself because I always, I'm winning $1 million tomorrow. That's what I like to see.
Oh, I totally get it. Well, and the other thing too is I tell everybody, if you're a reader, what I've noticed is the first time you ask a question about something, you'll be given this great, oh, here it is. And it's all laid out perfectly. And it's the chariot. And here we are going that way. And 3 days later, you're like, I need to double check that. And so you pull again on that same question. And then it's like 75% the same thing with a few confusing cards. And you're like, okay, I think I'm right. And then you do it a couple days later and it's this mass confusion. And it's like, look, I already told you.
You're waiting a few days. Me, I'm like, I pull cards, I get the answer, and then I'm like, hold on, let me do this again. Let me just look at it again. Let me just make sure this is what I'm seeing. And then it's all gone. All gone.
It's been a joke of mine because I literally think spirit is kind of that way. It's like, hey, I gave you that, so trust. And then it's like, okay, I'm giving you it again, but I'm tapping my toe.
I had a situation happen where I was getting images and I said, this is ridiculous. It's not making sense. And I was in meditation and a tall, slender, white man in slacks, never met him before, sat probably, dressed. I can't tell you the time, sat down next to me and he said, you need to learn how to trust. And, it's hard. And I would love to walk around going, saying, hey, I got no issues with trusting, but I'm human.
I do impeccable when I'm in a reading. It's when I'm in my human suit that I don't. And
for myself.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But I also think that's part of the journey. I think, part of the journey is we're not supposed to know everything ahead of time. I think we know the outline. I think we do write that. I do think that there's some destiny and fate that's woven in between all of that as well.
For sure.
And so you have to kind of let yourself see through. And the one thing that's interesting is being here in the shop because of all of the history and the magic here. When I sit down here, I'm 1,000% and then some empowered. And there's something about this place. It's like Delphi in Greece. It's like Sedona. It's like all the sacred sites. It's probably like Cairo, honestly. There's an energy here that is interdimensional that if you're here and plugging in for the right reasons, you will be given direct channels of information.
Yeah.
For me, it is anyway. I also, if you ever do astrocartography, have you ever done any of that type of stuff?
I can't get it. I've tried and I look and I read it and I'm like, it's.
So astrocartography is I think Astrodent, whatever the one is, the astro.com or one of them. If you do travel astrology, they have a thing that talks about it. But when you run your chart through that, it will give you lines and show you where your Mercury line, your Mars line, your Sun line. But it's worth checking out to see where your power points are. Because I have two power lines that run through Louisiana. One of them is literally just outside of New Orleans, and the other one is over by Baton Rouge. So it's just cracks me up that this is where I would end up when that's the line that runs directly through.
Mine is where I'm at right now in astrophotography. It says, this is where you're going to be just delving into the unconscious and working through your wounds. And I'm like, damn it, I'm ready. I'm tired. But also my house I've never been attached to a house and I'm very attached and love this home. And every time I find fault, I look on Zillow and dream and I come back to the feeling of love to this home. But yes, that is on mine. I'm like, I want to move.
Well, give yourself time to walk about then and understand,
Yeah, we'll see.
Well,
that is my job. I mean, that is my job as a psychotherapist. It is. So that part makes sense.
And Sam, a few minutes ago, you were talking about how the space that you're currently in is very special. And it is. Chris and I have both been there. We both felt just something magical there. What are your plans there? Are you going to keep doing readings or something you can share with us?
So ultimate goal here is to take over the world. And then when we do that.
Okay.
Right on.
Right now, so Oneida Toops, Mary Oneida Toops moved here from Meridian, Mississippi in 68, 69, opened the store, the Witch's Workshop. She did not like what she could get occult-wise, so she had every library sending her books here. And that's 72. They were trying to push her out of the quarter. They didn't want witchcraft here at all. So that's why she petitioned the state and the government to become a church, so they couldn't push her out. And so we wouldn't have witchcraft in the quarter today if it wouldn't be for her to this capacity on such a public display, honestly. And there's wonderful stories about Andy Warhol and Bob Dylan, different ones that wandered through here getting information and things from her. And she really only she was the largest herb apothecary in the early 70s here in the country. And she only sold herbs and candles and oils, very simple. She had her weekly class out of here. The coven got so big, they would go to Pop's Fountain. We're in the middle of trying to purchase the whole downstairs of the building again, so we can have all of that effectively be the Church of Witchcraft again, the religious order of witchcraft. She put a book out in 75 called Magic High and Low. It is the 50th year anniversary right now, that we want to be able to put that out. And we're going to probably later this year be able to do so. And the goal is halfway through the year, if we can do everything right, we'll be the church again and we'll be offering up things. And then once we do that, we could have the classroom and teachers and people coming through, but then we can also send people out teaching as well too. So my goal is to really create this. I've always called it a spiritualist center. It's never been a store, although we cater to it being the tourist store that it is to pay the bills. But it's really about trying to create something effective for community. I really want the full herb apothecary tea counter back again, so I can teach people all of that herbology and working with Mama Gaia in that way. Just real simple, back to basics. You know, if I was a philanthropist millionaire, I'd rip out every 10th block in the city and put up co-op farms that took care of the local neighborhood, you know, and people, that's where they get all their stuff. Sorry about that. My soapbox, I'm getting down quick.
What you are talking about is Pluto, and they're probably tired of me saying this, Pluto and Aquarius.
No, it is. It is time for that to happen. One of the last people I had in here for reading, she's sitting here asking me, you know, what can I do? What can I do? And she's tied into creating large scale events, you know, like concert events and big things. I'm like, why aren't you putting together the next big thing to bring some peace around the world? Like, when was the last time you saw every country in the world supporting a World AIDS Day, like Aid for Africa was back in the day, and all of that stuff? You have the people, you have the connections, you have to now you have to dream the dream so we can build it.
Yeah.
You know, and everybody's so afraid that they can't do this or that. I'm like, you get 6 artists involved, everybody's going to throw money at that. First thing you do, put together a charity concert for LA where no one gets paid, but everybody plays. See how much money you bring.
It's true.
You know, and it's trying to get people back into their own backyard again and creating community and outside of the press of a button to what's happening around the world. It's about tribe. It's about thriving locally so we can sustain globally. Whoa, that came out of nowhere.
Yeah, I was just about to say, say that again. Say that again.
It's about, you know, doing locally so we can sustain globally. You know,
yes,
it really is.
Doing locally so we can sustain globally. I love that.
Yeah, that's going to be a new phrase for me, I think.
You've had a couple great phrases today. Like, you're just blowing our mind. And again, that just continues how we felt when we met you in person. I do want to say, I love that you decided to free flow this episode with us, because unbeknownst to you, you touched on our next 2 topics, one of them being premonitions and the next one being past lives reincarnation. And we did speak to that. So that's really kind of exciting that you're like introducing our next 2 topics.
Absolutely.
Well, and so, I mean, here we are. So if people can get out of the way of this moment and recognize we are eternal beings in that timeline, in that spiral of travel, and we're going to have memories of old lives, we're going to run into people that seem familiar. You're going to have those overwhelming emotions when you meet people and you have no idea why. That's very real. And if everybody would just get out of their own way and recognize energy never dissipates, it only changes form, then we can all be on that page. Okay. And I really think, just like me here, when people ask me questions and like, well, aren't you worried? Aren't you whatever? I'm like, no, I'm not. We planned this out lifetimes ago. I met my partner 20 years ago online through artwork, and we chatted about everything. I didn't meet him till 6 years ago in person. And it was so overwhelming when we met, because I've had all these weird past lives pop up through different ceremonies or stories or dreams that I had. And when I started chatting with him, he was describing the other piece of that, but I almost saw them weaving together, being sewn together when we met. What meant to be one or 2 days together turned into 8, turned into me moving here and now having what we have. You know, I was moving back to LA. I had written the book. I moved back to LA trying to regroup my life from Atlanta, and I had no clue. The voice in my head kept saying, you got to get to LA, you got to get to LA. Wait, Louisiana is LA.
Oh, makes so much sense. Makes so much.
I know it. And what was the other subject you were talking about? We said past lives, and what was the other thing?
Premonitions.
Oh my God. Premonitions are real. Everybody should realize that you're going to have them, and it's not going to be every time someone you know is going to die. You're going to only have a few of those in your world. If you're getting premonition of someone passing away that's around you, someone's friend, something, it's meant for you to kind of hold space for them and kind of be a through line, and not that you have to step in and help them and all of that, but it's almost like witness the process in a certain way.
Right. And I honestly could sit here and talk to you all day, but where can our listeners find you, or what advice do you want to leave our listeners with? I mean, given it throughout the episode, it's been wonderful.
Be gentle with yourself and allow yourself to discover who you have become as opposed to who everybody told you were. Mm-hmm. And allow yourself to grow and blossom on your terms and conditions, and not the force of the people around you. You know, let the intuition come through, let it guide you, and let it be a path, and just own it and know it. And there's no need for arguments. There's no need to react unless it's saving a life. It's about proper response. It's about respecting other people. It's about giving them space to hear their story and getting out of the way to recognize how yours is very similar and weaves. We're all here on this planet, and life is intelligent. It came millions of years before us. It's going to be here millions of years after us. Mm. This is the time we got. So live now, dance, play, make your magic. You want to be a rock star, get on stage. But no one can stop you from doing it other than yourself.
I love
That's so
that.
true. That's beautiful. I absolutely love that. Where can our listeners find you, or how can they contact you?
handsoffatenola.com, spelled out. That is the easiest. Hands of Fate NOLA. That's our little shop here. handsoffatenola@gmail.com. You can also do that and send us direct messages. If you're in town, we tend to do about noon to about 7, but it gets such weird because it's a tourist city. So sometimes we are variable hours. And then some of the people, when I'm working on heavier stories, sometimes I need a break. So, making sure we give ourselves breaks, Yeah.
Exactly. Well, I really hope you'll come back and chat with us in the future. But before I let you go, I do want to say you have your book also, A Shamanic Medium Stories of Life After Death. And I have the copy you gave me right here. I haven't finished it, but I am enjoying everything I've read so far. Is it on Amazon, or where can they find the book?
They can get it on Amazon or direct through us. Okay. And it's like $12, I think. And it's really 9 client stories in one premonition dream, because I think it's important that people can let their brain play a little Tetris. And that's really, when you read it, it starts to connect dots in a different way. I didn't quite understand. Everybody wanted me to write it. And then I wrote it and I put it out there. But now, years later, I'm hearing the responses of people like, oh my God, that connected so much. And I wrote it real simply so anyone can read it. It's like I wrote it to be a travel read. 3-4 page chapters, little anecdotes, like you're talking to me right now,
And we'll put the link to your book and your shop in our show notes. But thank you so much for being here. It means so much, because
thank you so much.
We're learning, we're experiencing, and you have been a wonderful experience in our life. And it's going to continue, because I'm not letting you off the hook. I'm going to reach out for another reading, or maybe a past life regression.
Well, no, we'll definitely do that. I would love that. So just give me a holler. I'm always around, and we're just going into La Base en Temps Roulette. It's time for that Mardi Gras.
Yeah, I'll wait till after Mardi Gras. I'll give you a little bit of a break.
Oh, that would be nice, actually. Take care of yourselves. Be good.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye, Sam.
Well. Bye-bye.
Bye, Sam.
Thank you, Sam, for joining us. With that, I'm going to say stay classy.
Stay sassy.
And stay badassy.